Welcome to Movie Monday. Maya and I, watched a movie that I saw like the premise of listed and that it was good and interesting, so I was like, sure, why not? So we watched Fearless, which the premise is that a guy survives a plane crash and things get weird in terms of
Where in the
the mental
world did
state.
you, yeah, where in the world did you
I
hear of this?
don't remember, to be honest, because the thing is,
Oh,
I know I saw some like science fiction kind of like movie lists, and I know some of them sort of like came. Some of the things in our main list came from that, so I thought this was from that, but this is not science fiction, so I guess it wasn't
oh,
that. So then I don't know what it was from actually. Um,
oh,
but yeah, I knew it was a guy who survives a plane crash and he goes through things mentally, emotionally, and I didn't really know anything besides that. And that's what it is. That's what this movie is. There's, not really much else going on, which kind of sounds like a bad thing, but I don't know. I'm not really sure how I feel about this.
it's very strange.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I kind of thought it'd be a little bit more straightforward when you said, okay, it's about a guy who survives a plane crash.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like, I feel like I'm missing something.
Mm.
Like, I know it was mentioned in like the end credits or something that this was based off a novel, and I
Yeah.
wonder if the novel makes more sense?
Maybe in terms of, like, understanding, like, kind of exactly the mental state of what's going on, maybe.
Yeah,
I
because
can see
like
that.
there are some scenes that are really interesting and engaging, like the plane crash. Okay. Uh
Oh, yeah.
right, spoilers. So, there will be like very light spoilers. We won't talk about certain things until later, I guess, but this movie's
Well,
really weird to talk
yeah.
about.
I mean, here's the thing. It may not be a surprise that they do show the plane crash, right?
Yeah.
That scene is fucking trippy. Like that. Like I'm almost tempted to recommend the movie just for that scene because it's very interesting how they do it. Um,
Yeah.
so there's that. There's also the whole thing with like the car and like the toolbox, which
Yeah.
is interesting in terms of how that kind of comes about. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting stuff. And the thing is, it's all about, how do people sort of cope with like again, dealing with something traumatic. And nobody really copes with it healthily. It's kind of all negative to some degree. It's just sort of how
Yeah.
negative it is and how are you affecting other people. And I think it portrays it that way. It doesn't really portray, oh, look at this, enlightened character, isn't he so smart or whatever. It's like, no, it doesn't do that really.
Yeah.
Um, so and that definitely does point to some things that, like, for example, there's a scene. I don't know how to describe it besides in my head. I'm like the AA meeting, which is not what it is, but that's what that's what I think of. Because that kind of stuff, the whole thing where like the woman Carla, she like kind of snaps at the guy and also the woman, right? And
Okay, so like there's a couple of things about that scene I want to like bring up, but I
okay,
don't know if like how many spoilers I'm gonna reveal. So just fair warning, I'm gonna like say a few things. So um I've never, been to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting or anything similar to like this kind of group therapy thing. So
me
I
neither.
wasn't exactly sure if it was portrayed properly. It just felt very unprofessional somehow.
Mm,
I don't know if it's because they purposely made the like psychologist character kind of a hack, but I just felt like the way it was presented was very strange. Like not strange like the other scenes, but strange as in like you should be fired for doing something like this. I don't know if this is the proper way to do it, but I
mm.
just felt like the way it was framed and presented was very odd and very like not professional.
I get
Eh,
that, but my thing, not really issue, but my notice was more like not really the overall like setup of everything, but like what specifically was said by certain characters.
yeah, that
Um,
was the other thing I wanted to talk about.
it's like those are oftentimes like lines that like I do hear people say, right?
Yeah.
And they are lines that, like, to me, they do kind of bother me. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
Yeah.
I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head right now. Maybe you can, but it's always been stuff where it's like, you know, this sense of like, you know,
Like taking this emotion out on someone else won't like fix things, or it's like
yeah, no,
it's
oh yeah,
not.
okay, that's a good example. So that whole thing is like, well, you know, oh yeah, well, yeah, right. You know, if you yelling at this person is not going to like solve the problem, and it's like, no, but I want to yell at the fucking person. So you know, let me do that, or you know what I mean? Like, you know, I kind of again, that was an example where it's like, you're right, but fuck you, like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's something where
That was also why it kind of like put me off. I just thought it was very strange.
I don't know, but to me, like, I agree that like a professional like person probably shouldn't be doing that, but that sort of line are things that people say.
Yeah.
So to me that kind of works in that sense where it's and again, there's other examples of things that were said. The whole thing about like, you know, what the flight attendant is saying, it's something where it's like, you know, I get how the flight attendant might think they are helping, but like I'm also like totally on Carla's side where it's like, actually no, fuck you, you're not helping me at all. Like
Yeah, I
so
feel like
you know.
these types of things you would say privately one-on-one with your psychologist and not in an AA meeting. Because when you're at an AA meeting, you all have a drinking problem, right? So it's more of like you're there to relate to each other and like encourage each other to do better. But this is like people who are like traumatized. Like, I'm not saying that alcoholics aren't traumatized to some degree, but I just feel like it was a very inappropriate way to go about this type of like treatment or like
Yeah.
group therapy.
Yeah. I'm not gonna
Like, it was low key fucked up.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I'm just thinking that for me, it was sort of like an outlet of, you know, again, common things that people say regarding
Yeah.
this kind of situations and why, like, those common things are not necessarily actually helpful. Which is something
Yeah.
that I've seen that before, where, like, just standard things about, you know, oh, like, you know, it's like, oh, things are going to be okay. And it's like, they're fucking not okay. Like, piss off. Like, you know, you're not helping me. So I'm kind of, I kind of, I don't know if like it is the right word, but like to me at least that was how I kind of what I took away from it, and in that sense, I was glad to at least see the acknowledgement of how those kind of things are like not necessarily helpful. But I get that the presentation of it is maybe in a way that like feels like unprofessional and that like that wouldn't happen in real life. So I get that side of it too.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say about the meeting was okay, so like I guess this is like, you know, touching on the whole magical realism thing. So like you can suspend your disbelief and I'm fine with that, but I think the lady, like first lady who spoke about her sister and her like niece and nephew and her kids.
Mm.
She mentioned that like the reason a lot of these people at the AA meeting, the PTSD meeting, I guess, the reason a lot of them survived was because they came in contact with the main character.
Mm.
But like his like partner didn't survive, but he was sitting right next to him, and I don't really understand that.
Well, but see, that's the thing though, is that at the spoilers, he doesn't sit next to him at the end when the plane actually crashes. Right,
Right,
he
but
sits
he
next to the
held on
kid.
to it. He held on to him for a while, and like they,
Yeah, but he does ultimately sit next to the kid, and the kid does live. So
yeah.
I don't know. Like there is.
I just thought that was weird, and
Yeah,
you know,
this is it's
I
a
was
it's a weird movie. It's in terms of the presentation of it and like yeah, there's this like there's other things that you know definitely I'm glad how they the whole thing about you know like the media trying to get up all in his face like oh you saved all these people and he's just like can we not do this please so like you know like I get there's that aspect of things and I do think it's kind of interesting this idea of like you know surviving something really traumatic and dangerous might give you a sense of like invincibility. Like I think that concept
yeah.
is really interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I necessarily how it was explored here is like necessarily the way I would have done it, or how like what specifically speaks to me super strongly. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's like this is a, like let me put it this way: if someone said they loved this movie, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I would
Right?
probably be able to see it. I guess like
Yeah.
I would take this concept and do it in a different way cuz I
Mm-hmm.
guess for me I didn't dislike the main character. I just thought he was very like not weird but kind of I couldn't wrap my head around how he was so emotionless.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Because
Like
it's.
I
Go ahead.
know like people can dissociate and after trauma sometimes you like shut down your emotions, but he was so emotionless that I was
Mm-hmm.
like, is he okay?
I mean, no.
No, he's not okay.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing, and why I think it helps that like the movie doesn't really frame him as like a, the good guy. Really, it's just like here
Yeah.
is a person. He's doing things this way, and this is a
Yeah.
way to do it, right? And especially considering what happens at the very end, it does seem almost
Mhm.
to kind of take a stance about like that way was wrong, right?
Mhm.
But it does still kind of get into some interesting ideas and like again sort of okay, well then what do you do in that situation, which the movie doesn't answer really, which is fine. I'm not saying that's because again this is a very personal complicated topic, so
Mhm.
presenting some scenarios and some outlooks and not doing a defining answer is fine as long as that's what you're setting out to do, and I feel like that was what they were setting out to do.
Yeah, I
So
think ultimately they were trying to say do it in whatever way you think is productive.
mhm.
And I'm fine with that. It's just I guess this particular way with the
Right.
one particular person, I was just like, that's kind of strange, but all right,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
I,
gonna
I
question it.
I agree with you. It's a sense where, like, again, conceptually, totally fine with it, and I understand also the framing of everything, that this is a method of doing things, you don't have to agree with it. So it's like,
Yeah,
alright, cool. But it's still not a method that I would want to do it. So it's like, yeah, it's like, I get it, and I get that like, it's not supposed to necessarily work for me, but it doesn't really work for me. So
yeah,
it's this weird sort of disconnect. But again, I would totally understand if it does for somebody else. So, and like you said, again, there are some interesting scenes in here. There's interesting moments. Um, again, especially when they actually show the crash. I think that's like holy shit. This is like insane. Um,
how did they do that for like
it's a
1993?
good question. I don't know. Um, that's a very good question. Yeah, I don't know. Um, I will say this. This is not the same thing. Well, um, I've somewhat recently watched The Boys, and there's a plane crash in that show,
Mhm.
and I don't want to get into it because it's if someone has not seen the show and they're curious about it, I want them to experience this as it happens. But it's visceral and fucked up in a completely different way, but it's still sort of like emotionally sort of kind of hits similar beats, even though it's not really that similar.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's hard to explain. But again, it's also part of it. Also, is again, it's this sense of like and I know that like it's their job, but the whole thing about like the flight attendants, like, oh yeah, everyone just like brace for impact and you'll be fine. It's like, it's like I kind of hate that, and I know that like they're supposed to do
Lie to
that.
everyone.
I know. So that's another thing. The whole like lying that like things are going to be fine, and like I know that like for some people that is helpful. I really don't like that personally.
Mhm.
It really bothers me. Like I want the truth and I want to know that like yeah, you're kind of fucked. Like, or that like here's something that is really shitty and it's not, so but I know that not everyone's like that. So
Mhm.
um but it was interesting how again this movie seemed to be kind of presenting it that yeah, it is kind of shitty, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what the whole meeting thing is about. How it's like, see, look, everything's fine. We're all helping each other, and it's just like,
I
fuck,
think that's
fuck you,
also
right?
maybe why they chose to make the main character have no filter and
Mm,
like only speak the truth.
mm-hmm.
So I think that yeah, when you brought that up, I realized maybe that was what they were trying to do with that.
Mm-hmm. It's an element to some degree, but
Mhm.
So that's interesting. I will say there are sort of like moments in the movie as well. While there are good scenes in the movie, there also are moments in the movie where it just kind of feels like nothing's really happening.
Yeah. It's
So
very quiet.
yeah, it's a quiet and slow movie,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily a problem, but it is at times kind of a problem. So yeah, I'm really struggling. Like, what number am I going to give this? It's really
I'm not
hard.
really sure either.
Because here's the thing, I'm not negative on it,
Yeah,
right?
same.
So it's not going to be a 4 or less. But I'm like, because for example, would I like watch this again? No. Um, would I recommend it to someone else? Maybe, depending on the person.
Yeah.
Maybe. Um,
I mean, I kind of maybe thought 5 would be fair,
mm,
but like I'm not sure because like I don't even really know how I feel. It's
hmm
just that I kind of know what I like thought was more interesting than other things. I guess I don't know. It's really difficult to.
yeah. I'm kind of yeah. Basically, I'm kind of deciding: is it a 5 or is it a 6? Right. Which, and again, 6 is seems to imply like that's like a like not very good, and it's like no, it's again, these numbers are not objective quality numbers. That's just how we feel about things subjectively and our own personal
Yeah.
experience and stuff. So and again, there are things I like here. Again, like I said before, Plain Crestine is extremely well done, very interesting how they portray it. But at the same time, do you actually really want to sit through the rest of the movie to watch that? I don't know. Some people probably would. So, but would I? And is that enough? Like, is that scene interesting enough? And are some of the themes interesting enough to move it above a 5, even though my overall interest and investment in terms of like specific scenes here and there was kind of low?
Yeah. I think I'll just commit to a 5. I feel like that's the most fair that I can give it just because it's I feel like if I engaged a little bit like maybe if Carla was the main character, I would
Hmm.
maybe go with 6 or higher. I don't know. I felt more invested in her struggles than with the main character, but I guess it was kind of the point to make him the way he is.
Yeah. Uh,
Now you have to commit.
you know what? Just because you gave it a 5, I'll give it a 6.
Okay.
Just to cover both bases there. Is that fair?
Cover your own ass.
Sure. I don't know. Because again, I'm thinking like there are things that I think were worth it.
Mm.
And there is some interest involved with stuff. So, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking
think
like,
this is
what
fair.
other movies have I like thought were like a 5? I think the only one I actually had was like what? Oh, I had Rise of Skywalker as a 5. I forgot about that. And okay,
Lol.
Usual Suspects. I mean, yeah, it's almost like well, I don't want to get in that topic again, but yeah, I'll go with that. I guess that works. So okay. So all right, we are moving on to the list. Oh, and well, since this is a random pick, we replaced it with another random pick. And should we
Yep.
tell the whole story or just mention the result?
Yeah, we might as well go with the story. So originally, we randomed a different movie. It's an international film, but we couldn't find it anywhere, so we kept it on like the list, and maybe we might find it in the future, but
Mm,
apparently maybe not right now.
yeah, but instead we got another international film that we did find.
Yes.
This is an Indian film called PETA or PETA. I'm not sure. And Tara
Yeah.
swears that it's entertaining. So okay, we'll believe you.
I'm willing to believe. I mean, there are some like Bollywood movies that I am interested in seeing that it hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. In the meantime, let us random our things. And what do we end up as a result of it all? We get
Oh my god!
boy in time.
Oh balls! All right.
Okay, do you know anything about this movie?
I vaguely remember watching a review of it, but I can't remember a goddamn thing about
Okay,
it.
so I put this movie on the list for a very specific reason. This movie is not good,
Uh-huh.
but this is a very interesting example of a movie that has a great idea that it uses poorly.
Okay.
And so I want you to see this as an example of that.
Okay.
And to see like how they take something that is so interesting in concept and just don't do
Fuck it
it. so that's, don't expect something good. I don't think it's terrible. Okay, so I don't think
Right,
this movie's
yeah.
terrible. It's just disappointing based on what the potential could be. So that's the framework of this. So now your expectations are where they should be for this.
On the floor.
I didn't say. I said it's not terrible.
Yeah, but still on the floor, so at least I can be like, okay, I mean, they did something with it.
Okay.
I want to try to be a little bit positive.
Okay.
I can like picture the movie poster in my head, but I can't remember a goddamn thing about this
Yeah,
movie.
that's the problem. It's ends up not being memorable at all, despite having a very interesting premise. So, okay. Well,
That's what fanfic is for.
seriously. Um, there must be some other stories that have this kind of hook. We'll talk about it when we talk about the movie, watch the movie. But yeah, so okay, that's next week. Get ready
Great.
for a gay old time.
Gay old time.
This movie is not old and it's not gay.
Bye bye.
Okay.